Oh, and I was just going to say,
Just start.
please record.
Thank you, Mark. I just started it, everybody. Okay, we're on.
The State Board of Landscape Architects, February 15th, 2022 meeting to order. Board members present, Dominic Seltruda and Ann Penniman and Mark Aragoni. Okay, item agenda 1, review of the meeting minutes, November 16th. Did Dom and Ann have a chance to look at them? If you didn't, we can take a second to look at them, but they were sent out in the package, I believe, last week or the week before.
I'm good with them.
Ann, are you taking a look?
Yep. I'm fine with them.
Okay, anybody want to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Item number 2, comments or concerns of any person present today. Bob, do we have anybody else on the line besides Raul?
At the moment, Mr. Chairman, we do not. No
Okay.
attendee.
Then we'll just keep an eye on the waiting room and see if anybody joins, and we can always move them into that one. But let's move on to item number 3. DCP Investigation Division complaint status.
Okay, we don't have any of the investigators here at the moment, but the report went out.
Okay. And I think we are going to touch a little bit upon some of the things that we talked to. I think Pamela Brown was at our last meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And we got into some discussions, and I think that's going to come up again. And I'm glad Raul is here, but that's going to come up again on item 4B. So if everybody's okay, we can move to item 4, old business. Okay, item 4A, continuation of our involvement with our accredited university program. We had a good discussion on this last time.
Yeah.
Dom, I think you had reached out for a little help, and then I think we had a flurry of activity with Phil. We almost found a date.
I know.
We almost locked in a date to get up there and present, because we have a presentation now. And I think what the plan will be, we got so close last semester that there's no reason why we can't make it happen.
Yeah, I think we had to wait for the semester to begin, and now we'll get back with Phil and see if he can help us out to touch base with one of those people up there. I think it'll actually work out a little bit better for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
What to expect. We might get a better turnout. We'll just have to figure out which place we're going to be in. So we'll aim for that March area, end of March area, to try to get up there. So
Yeah.
Push forward with that.
So I think we'll just keep it where it is on the agenda, and we'll continue to sort of push it. I think we're finally in a good place.
Yep, I agree.
Get up there. Okay, item 4B, continuation of discussion regarding concerns on the restriction of landscape architecture practice by local and state agencies. So since our last meeting, I apologize, I was a little late on getting some information out, but Pamela Brown did attend our last meeting. I'm just trying to pull up an email here. Bear with me. Sent. Pamela Brown was at our last meeting. We did have a good discussion. We actually talked a little bit about the history. Raul Rodriguez's name came up because he was involved a little bit a year or two ago in a complaint that a board member, Phil, had brought up. But our discussion at our last board meeting actually got Leslie O'Brien involved in the conversation. She is a legislative director with DCP. She did reach out via email asking for some additional information and some history on the project. She reached out relatively quickly. I was a little late on getting some information, but I did send an email out last week with some additional information. And I actually put Raul Rodriguez back on the email chain just because there was some history there. So that email went back out and I asked if anybody wanted to attend this meeting. So thankfully, Raul is on the call. So where we are is we're looking for some support. I would call it some maybe legal or Department of Consumer Protection support in potentially updating. We have the letter, the Vince McDermott letter that we consistently fall back on as saying to anybody who doesn't accept the landscape architectural stamp for what we are legally authorized to stamp. I think that letter is, maybe it's getting old, it's not carrying any weight and people are kind of ignoring it. So I think we need to either update that, get something back on the record, maybe have joint signatures, maybe from the board and potentially DCP. But that's sort of where we are. I'm glad we're having the conversation. And I want to thank Raul for joining us. I know you were involved historically on this one. I don't know how you are up to date currently, but if you wanted to add anything, we're gonna make this an effort to push this thing forward and get some resolution and hopefully put a little pressure on some of the agencies that are not accepting our stamp, that we feel pretty strongly that there's no reason why they shouldn't be. So Raul, if you want to add anything, floor is yours.
Well, I mean, I could go back to the meeting of May 8th, 2018. And before that, on May 7th, my department head had sent a letter to Robert Kuzmich. And basically the advice was that our office represents the board itself and will assist the board with legal questions as well as defending the board in any litigation. However, our office does not represent individual architects and cannot advocate on their behalf. The board only has the authority provided under the statutes and therefore has no authority to take action against the town, even if the town is not properly recognizing authority or landscape of a landscape architect. The board's authority is to enforce the specific licensing issues of individuals with the approval of the commissioner. If there is still an issue, my suggestion is that the Department of Consumer Protection do outreach to the town regarding the statutory authority for landscape architects, since the board falls under its jurisdiction. And there was the issue with the board number where we had asked for the project number and he just never got back to me with the project number to send to the DOT, because the DOT was always open and willing to discuss it. We sent them the information, they sent us back some questions. And if anyone has a problem with the DOT in the future and you want to bring it to our attention and have me pass it on to the DOT and ask them what their position is and what, because these things are very fact specific. You're getting down to, you know, what a landscape architecture can do and what a professional engineer can do and what the town thinks the facts are and who they think should be making the call on it. And I think it's great that you have Leslie O'Brien involved in the future, because the legislature just started in session. And if you think there's anything in the statute that needs to be clarified, you could work with Leslie and you could work with legal counsel at the DCP to craft the language. Even if you wanted to change your regulations to match that, you know, that would be the way to do it. Do you have any questions for me or things that you guys were looking for?
I'm going to open it back up to Dom and Ann, just because I felt like I talked for too long anyway. So I thank you for that, the history on it. If we didn't supply the project number or Phil didn't supply the project number for that specific DOT project, I think that's something we can do. we just want to sort of push this. I don't think it's a matter of clarifying regulation or statute. I think it's trying to, I like the word you sort of put, the outreach. If we can have support and outreach to a few of the municipalities and maybe have a dialogue with the DOT, that may be the best route rather than just slapping another letter together and getting it out that they can just ignore again. So I think outreach is probably a good approach, but thank you for the history. And Dom or Ann, if you have questions.
I have a quick question. What would outreach look like? Would it be actually some sort of in-person meetings or some sort of quick webinar, or is it in print form? Is it phone calls? That's what I'm curious about.
I think they're all good questions. I don't have the answer. I think we need to craft it.
And I was going to say, you know, it's one thing to reach out to individual town building officials and town engineers or town zoning officials. It's one thing to do that. Those folks often, you know, move on to other jobs. So it's not just about reaching out to an individual. It's like somehow embedding this statutory authority into like the town's practices and in their building departments.
I agree.
And how do we do that?
And that's why I'm happy that we have, you know, we have 3 individuals who seem to be engaged at the moment, and I want to keep them engaged and develop some type of plan. I don't know what that outreach is. I think it may be several of the things that you talked about. But as the board, I think we need as much support from our mother agency, DCP, and then hypothetically, legislative support as well to try and get some traction. To Raul's point, in the letter that he submitted, or the email that was submitted back in 2018, it was really, we do have a purview. Our board has a purview of what we can do, and we're making sure that anybody who gets licensed to practice landscape architecture is following the 3 E's and everything of that nature. But if we can't support as a board how that license is accepted or utilized, then what are we licensing? What are we licensing for? So I think there is a little bit of overlap there, which I'm okay in pushing a little bit if the rest of the board is okay in pushing a little bit.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
Go ahead. The May 8th, 2018 minutes will reflect is that our recommendation that is when it came up somewhere in a town where landscape engineer was having a problem getting his seal approved, that they would make a complaint to the Department of Consumer Protection, and then the Department of Consumer Protection could get involved with talking with the town. And I don't know if that's happened. I know Richard Hurlbert at the time said that, you know, that hadn't happened at all. And I don't know if the board's recommended that to the people who complain.
I think we have in the past. It's kind of a catch-22 on their part, because, and you know, speaking out of line here a little bit, you know, it's tough for them as, like, I'm talking like a sole proprietorship, or even the bigger companies that some of us work for, to file that complaint. And I think that's where the you know, we have to make it go. I think you're right with the outreach. So when there is a complaint, you know, I'm almost seeing a graph. Okay, you got to educate the town to say, okay, here's the licensures you have: architecture, landscape architecture, engineering, survey, and then here's what they can actually stamp, because it all comes down to the stamping criteria as far as I'm concerned. A site plan, all 4 can stamp. You know, ancillary drainage and grading, 3 of them can stamp. And then, you know, when it gets into the pipes and all the fun stuff, you know, they can't stamp. There's a resilience plan. Maybe that has to be laid out and understood where there is overlap, because there is overlap between the disciplines. And that's where that's where the hangup is coming.
Yeah. And as far as, Dom, you bring up a great point. In a practicing landscape architect, you know, whether they're a sole proprietor or they work for a larger firm, I think that the general feeling is, well, why should I have to file a complaint when I'm actually doing everything that I should be doing? And I think that's where there's a little bit of a disconnect. And it's almost that, well, how is that fair? I'm complaining that I can't use something that I'm certified and licensed to use. So that's why, yep, I think they can file a complaint if they so choose to do that. I think the outreach is a little bit more proactive than being reactive and having to file a complaint. We need to be more proactive and get the word out that, you know, before you deny this, you probably shouldn't deny the stamp. I agree with you, Don.
Yep.
So what about an official letter from the DCP and then arm all practicing or licensed landscape architects in the state with this same letter and direct them in the meantime to when they submit their plans to also submit the letter with their plans. I know it seems like belts and suspenders, but maybe that's the way to go about it for the interim. And then that's the way to
Educate. Yeah.
inform and educate, right?
Yeah. And I agree. I think it's, you know, to me, it's an update of the Vince McDermott letter with
Right.
not just the boards, not coming just from our board, but with a little bit, maybe a couple of additional signatures. Maybe it comes from Department of Consumer Protection. Maybe it comes from, you know, multiple people. So I think we're moving in the right direction with Raul on the line and his history on the project and their recommendations, with Leslie now getting engaged, Pamela engaged. I think that is a goal, whether it starts with a new refresh letter that we can make sure that our professional landscape architects have. Because I mean, 90% of the towns and municipalities are not having an issue, but I think it would be good to have it. And that's just one other way to get the word out if we arm people with the ability to submit it.
Can we target the towns that don't accept the landscape architecture stamp and target them with the new letter right off the bat, send it to all the building officials?
Yeah, I would say that we can target them. I think that it should go out to all of them.
Okay.
I think the first goal is to get this form of communication, whether it's a letter, I don't know exactly what it is, but I think letter is probably the right way to go, is to get this drafted and ready to go.
Sounds good.
Dom?
I agree.
Okay, so like I said, I did send an email out to those four. It was Leslie, it was Pam, it was Raul. I did make sure Bob was CC'd on it, just giving them information that you guys are all aware of. I think the next communication, I will follow up and just say, this is what at our board meeting, we talked about potentially drafting a letter. Do you have any recommendations on how we move forward with that? If it's something that I draft up and we all have a communication and get it going and they review, or is it something that DCP takes the lead on? I think that's what we got to figure out. So I don't think we're going to figure it out today, but I think that should be the plan moving forward.
And that it gets signed by somebody higher than our board,
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
a higher authority, as they say.
Agreed. Okay. Anybody else? Raul, do you want to add anything? I'm just so happy that you're here listening to this.
No, it's been a pleasure being here. It sounds like you're going in the right direction. And after this issue is done, I'll be getting off the Zoom meeting.
Okay, well, thank you. And I will keep, if you don't mind, I'm going to keep you on sort of the email chain and just as we discuss about how this gets together and drafted.
Nope, I don't mind. That's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much for attending.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
I roll.
Bye.
Okay, moving on to 4C, continuation of discussion concerning live attendance requirement for landscape architects, CEUs, relative to the COVID pandemic. And this is just something that our board is taking up on a meeting-to-meeting basis, allowing for recorded CEU presentations rather than only live. And we have been consistently sort of keeping this and making a joint decision at each meeting to either keep it the way we have it right now or eventually change back to live only. And that's still up for discussion.
I'll begin the discussion. I first think we need to move it to the next meeting again and keep it as not live, only because I'm seeing attending an event that's supposed to be live in 2 weeks that's gone back to virtual because of issues, obviously, with, I think, time of year. I think live is, I want to go on record to state that live is I think something we want to strive towards eventually. I think learning is better when it's hands-on and in the discussion sometimes is lost during virtual. However, I don't think that time is now. I think we should keep it as, if people want to do it Zoom meetings and such, we move it to the next meeting and reevaluate again. I'm hoping we get out of this realm, but I don't think it's there yet. That's my personal opinion.
Anne?
Well, I basically agree with Dom. I did attend a seminar. It was split over. Usually it's a 2-day seminar, the NDAL. It's usually split over 2 days. It was split over 4 different afternoons. And they actually required you to take a quiz and pass with at least 75% in order to get your CEUs. So to me, that was motivation to really listen and not just to turn on my computer and walk away from it. You know, I thought that was a good format. I don't know if we could require that. You can't really do that, but I did think, I think a combination of live and maybe a percentage of live and online might look like a good option. It also is a convenience, so you don't have to drive for an hour or 2 to get to a place. Just thinking outside the box here.
You know that
There's
CTASLA or ASLA Connecticut or whatever they're calling themselves nowadays, most of the ones that I've been attending have the quiz at the end. I don't know if it's a requirement on LACES or not. But I know LACES, I usually try to attend the ones that are either LACES accredited or accredited for New York or New Jersey, which are some tighter requirements.
right.
I know that it's for me personally, it's inconvenient because I'd rather go to a bigger production and get a lot of my CEUs done at once. I don't like doing an hour here and an hour there, but I have been doing that to try to stay current, obviously. But you know, there's definite pros and cons to live, and there's pros and cons to the online, depending on what you're looking at.
Sure.
So I think those are all good points. My recommendation, my opinion would be to keep it how we have it for now. Maybe as we get towards our next meeting, we'll be able to attack it a little bit more. But I guess the recommendation I would make is to sort of keep it as we have had it, but pay attention to the potential to maybe make alterations to how we're looking at things as far as CEUs go.
Okay. And I just wanted to let you all know, I have a hard stop at 20 after 10. Gotta
Okay.
get to another meeting. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Let's keep rolling. So Bob, I don't think we need to formally vote on that. We're just gonna keep it how we have it.
Right. Yep.
And we'll
Yeah, I've
keep
been
it on.
invited.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, 4D, status of public member board appointments. Do you have any update for that, Bob?
We have a new, the commission, the person that was our contact has retired. We have a new person in her place, executive assistant to this commissioner. So I will contact her and, you know, and I could still contact her predecessor to make sure the information's passed along. She's the liaison. That position is the liaison with the governor's office for appointments.
Right, so we know we have candidates who have submitted their letters of interest.
Right.
And all we want to do is somehow get an approval from the governor's office or to appoint them, correct?
Correct.
So yeah,
In other words, how do we move it along? The letters are there, so.
yeah, it's not like we're searching for people. I think we found people. So yeah, would it be out of the ordinary to request that the entire board be put on that communication email?
No, as a matter of fact, I'd be glad to do that, Mark. I could, if you'd like, I could forward the email to you. Maybe you could send an email, just, you know, maybe you introduce yourself as the chairman of the board and we just want to, I could give you some.
That's fine. I'll do that.
I could give you kind of a draft of maybe what to say.
That would be great.
Introduce yourself to the new contact for the department and kind of carry the, you know, move past the torch along, you know, in terms of.
Do you actually have a list of the names of the potential candidates?
You know, I don't. I could inquire about that.
Yeah, I would actually make it. Yeah, the more pointed we could make it and say we have, you know, John, right, Jay, and Barbara all waiting. I just want to. I'd be happy to forward that email along, and I will CC the board on that communication.
I will get the contact information to you and find out what I can about, you know, what's in the hopper, so to speak.
Okay, that's great. That's great.
And
I will do that.
I think this is going to make the board that much more effective and legitimate, really.
Yeah, we're striving to have public members on there is the push on this.
It's important.
It is very important.
And then once we get them appointed, we can get them. I mean, Clarb has been offering the new board member orientation. They have some good things out there that we can then get them in that process, whether it's a virtual process or they can attend an orientation. That's the important part of it, is to get them in there, get them in the process. Okay. Item 5, new business, applications for licensing by written examination. So Bob did send out a group, and then we added an additional one last week. So I believe we have 3.
Right, we have, correct. One was requesting the board consider Leah Rachel Grossman. That was sent out as a separate email a few days ago. I think it might have been the end of last week or middle of last week. Hers is a very traditional application. She has she has the credentials certified through Clarb, an accredited degree. That's the add-on. The other applicant that's on our agenda, 5B, Ms. Fortuna, that's the one that she wants to sit for the exam and does not have the accredited degree. She has the alternate 4-year related degree in landscape architecture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you have Saban, right, as well?
Correct.
You want me to start? Because I know we've only got 18 minutes.
Yeah, start, because I think the first one is the easy one, or 2 of them maybe
Leah
Oh,
Grossman, I mean, the only thing I want to go on record as saying is this is the same issue we've had, and it's going to come up under new business after this. So we need a determination between our regulation and our statute, because she's coming in real close under the radar in terms of graduating in 2019 and coming into 2022, taking the test. I still want determination, but I can't really see anything wrong with this, except for the fact that another Massachusetts person coming to Connecticut to get their license. And I think a little of that is they don't have to wait the time, because Mass has the time. With that, I don't have any exception to her on that one. And that would be Leah Grossman. I'm going to go through all three of them since I've read them all. I don't know if you guys have read them all.
Yep, go ahead.
Jacqueline Fortuna, exactly the way the law has been laid out. She's asking for permission.
Yeah.
I did some research on the Australian legislation and how they do things in Australia. They're registered. That is true. I am unsure. I don't think they have to take an exam, but she has to be under a registration, which is their Australian Institute of Landscape Architects. I take no exception to her being able to sit for the exam to become a licensed architect, landscape architect in Connecticut. Under Sabin, I have one issue, and that being with the CLARB form that was forwarded to us under work experience. And it's not so much him, because if we look at the initial underneath a Derek Sabin, the registration in New York expired in 2018. I'm just wondering what they've been doing between 2018 and now, if they're practicing in this state, because the second work experience, which was verified, date verified for some reason, I'm not sure how it was verified, that there is no licensure after 2018 as opposed on this work experience. And I'm not going to hold him up on that maybe, but I think that should be sent to the investigation unit to see if Derek Sabin Limited is actually licensed in the state of Connecticut and holds somebody with a license. Because if I'm reading it incorrectly, you know, it initially states initial registration 1986 in New York, expiration date of 2018. Are they practicing in Connecticut, or is this a New York firm? I have no idea. But when you look to the newer one, 1819, and then we don't have 20 through 2022. I'm just.
Yeah, so I think it's a fair point. I think we got to stay focused on the 7 years of experience when it was a license. And we can take, I agree with you, we should probably look into the other one, but right now let's focus on the applicant and the candidate, which they meet the requirements. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. So thanks for that review, Dom. Ann, do you have any comments?
Very thorough. No, I would suggest that we approve all three.
So the way we would do this is we would approve for Jacqueline Fortuna we'd give her the recommendation to sit for the exam.
Yes.
And then Grossman and Sabin, we would approve their application.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, also, as a formality, you probably should vote to add Leah, Leah Rachel Grossman to the agenda.
Okay.
Formally, and then, because it was not in print,
Okay.
I'm requesting that as the administrator to the chairman and board.
Okay.
So let's do that first. Can I have a motion to add Leah Grossman application to the agenda?
You have the motion. I'll make it.
Ann, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, then we need a motion to approve Jacqueline Fortuna to sit for the exam and Leah Grossman and Sabin approval of application.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Dom, did I hear you? I don't know if I heard you.
Yes, aye.
Okay, thanks. Okay,
And, okay, so Leah Grossman is included as, okay,
yep,
approved for the licensing, right?
correct.
Okay,
Okay, 5C, we don't need to take any action on that. But,
just an update for the board.
yep.
Yep.
5D, corporate practice. Again, we do not have to take action, but it's information for the board.
They've been vetted by the department and they're in order and they were approved.
Okay, 6, correspondence. Do we have any? Besides our applications?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
And besides the email that I sent back out to Leslie, Pam, Raul, and yourself.
I do not, other than that, no.
Okay, 7, any additional comments?
Just, yeah, I have two.
Okay.
Under the last meeting, we had talked about, we were going to talk to legal concerning the regulation versus the statute. That I just noted in the 3 people that came before us. And I want to handle that Saban thing, but it's noted on there. I don't know if it's a CLARB issue that they missed something in that person's application, but it should be checked to see if that person is actually, if there's somebody licensed in the state of Connecticut, both an individual license and a corporate license they're out of New Milford, Connecticut, as far as I can see.
Okay, so let's take that first one. Bob, how do we go about as a board requesting that DCP look into if that firm is practicing landscape architecture in Connecticut, who is the licensed person assigned to that firm? Every firm has to have one. Do they have a corporate practice license? How do we do that? Do we have to file a complaint? I really don't want to. I'd rather have you make a request to figure out how to do it, but I really don't know.
Yeah,
how.
I could, if you could send me kind of an email, just, in reviewing an applicant that came before the board, we noticed that, had questions on, and I could find out from Pam and or Janita where we go with it,
Okay.
Okay,
Just
I think
kind of an
that's fair.
informal, you send something to me, I will add on to it.
And like I said, it could have been through CLARB. CLARB could have missed
Right.
the application because we're just going based on what they show us. And it could have just been, oh, well, we had it on the other one, and they really should have been repetitive within the application. If there was.
Yeah, I would say, I think, with the 7 years under a hypothetical right situation, I don't know if CLARB would have even flagged it. I don't.
Well, we're seeing it for something else, and
Yeah.
I don't have a problem filing a complaint because it's what we're seeing something that's out of the jurisdiction of enforcement. So,
And that may be what comes back when we send an email, file a
Yeah.
formal complaint. Okay, more paperwork. Great, wonderful. Okay, so I jotted that down, Bob. I will send you an email, just referencing what we discussed as a board, and
Yeah.
we'd like to verify.
Kind
a
of
few things.
summarize it, and
Yep.
certainly, and I will forward it on.
Okay,
For, the board's looking for direction on what the next step is. This is what we've, came across in reviewing this candidate's application.
okay,
As an aside from the
Yep.
candidate, was approved for licensing.
correct.
This was ancillary to the whole,
Yep.
his application.
Yep.
Could I just ask, are we inquiring because there's no record of this person as licensed in the state?
We're inquiring, I believe, because they're listed as the same practice that once was a licensed landscape architect, that since 2018, it's a non-licensed landscape architect. And we're asking the question, Don brought it up. well, are they practicing landscape architecture? Because if they are, who's their licensed landscape architect? We might have, if they can supply somebody else that's the licensed landscape architect, great. But if they can't, then are they practicing landscape architecture without a license?
It looks like it's a father and son, maybe?
That's what it looks like, yeah.
And that's fine. The problem, and it could be within the CLARB format. The CLARB format, even if it's verified, has to show for those dates that he's still working for somebody, or are they still working? Because it just doesn't, I'm not looking at it, I'm approving him on his three-legged stool, but now I see something that doesn't.
Yep. I think we should ask the question, and hopefully they'll be able to just supply the information, or, hey, we've seen it before last year where we had some people who just let their license expire. So I will do that. Okay, we are 10:14.
And I want to know, we talked to Mr. Kuzmich, we're going to pursue a question with Department's Legal Division concerning interpretation of regulation versus statute. And can we move that to old business for the next meeting so we can see it and give it a number rather than under comments? Because that was under the item 7, comments and concerns, but we asked for a determination. I'd like legal to look at it and decide whether or not, is there a hiccup between the regulation and the statute? And
this is all about our approval to take the exam before the exam.
correct.
Yeah.
To take the exam before.
We approve them. Yeah.
Yes. It's twofold. They're graduating from college and immediately starting to take the exam. The way the law is written, you're supposed to have 2 years underneath, basically almost like an internship underneath a licensed landscape architect. Then you come to us and we can approve you to take the exam.
And we don't even have to get into the debate on what each individual board member feels. It's more of how is
It's
it
not
written?
feel, it's law.
Yeah.
It's how is it written and interpreted, and
Yep.
maybe they need to come and they need to research it and come, because just because the statute says it doesn't, or the regulation, and I get those terms confused.
Yep.
The law is the law, no matter what you guys put underneath it. And with that said, are we going to bring up the fact that we had this DCP issue with having to get your CEUs 3 months prior to your?
Well, I think we have to talk about that. So,
I'm
Bob,
getting some calls too.
yeah, Bob, that came as a little bit of a surprise to everybody on the board, that
Yeah.
3-month rule. And we all immediately, within minutes of that being published, we were getting calls on, well, what is this about? And we didn't have an answer. So
Legislation was recently passed that changed the reporting dates across the board, basically, except for accounting and pharmacy, to continue those professions requiring continuing education. CEUs are now due 3 months prior to the expiration of the license date. And I believe the reason for that was the department wanted the time to reconcile the submissions before licenses were issued, as opposed to finding out that someone that attested to continuing education really didn't, and the license has already been issued. Now we have to have a compliance hearing. This gives the department a chance to, and so it was a broad, kind of a broad stroke across all the professions, all the boards, except for accountancy and pharmacy, architects, landscape architects, home inspectors, real estate community managers, everything. So it really, what it did was it shortened up your 2-year. Continuing education is due even numbered bienniums for landscape architects. Your license cycle is still annual. Continuing education has always been even numbered years. So in essence, what happened is it shortened up your 2-year period by 3 months for the first cycle. Going forward, your continuing education period now for the next biennium is going to be May 1st of 2022 through April 30th of 2024. So going forward, you'll get the full year. It'll just be advanced 3 months. Begins 3 months before the license expires, and ends 3 months before the license expires in the next even numbered year. I know it's,
Yeah, it just caught a lot of people by surprise, I think, because,
but me too. We have continuing education too.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would, I mean, I think hindsight's always 2020. It probably would have been better to say, this is what we're going to implement, but instead of this is how we're doing it, but.
Yeah, it kind of came up. We found out, a lot of the boards and commissions found out about it when the law passed. You know, I don't know what happened in the communication of that, but you know,
During review on the first year of this, that there would be some leeway in terms of if someone's pretty close and they were diligently going through their, you know, someone who doesn't have any of them, I get it, but if they're close, I would hope there'd be some mitigation in there in terms of how
Yeah, I would agree.
they can be put on report, whatnot, you know.
and just not to hold things up, but as a tangent to that, you know, how has the board been treating those individuals that get their license within that 2-year window? You know, if you get your license with 3 months to go in the 2-year period, you can't, is it fair to say, okay, you have to provide 24 CEUs in 3 months, as
No.
opposed to someone that gets their license 1 month after the 2-year window starts, and they've got, you know, 95% of that time to get 24 CEUs. Other professions have basically said they've waived the CEU requirement for the first renewal. That picks up everybody. If
Yeah,
you're 3 months before, if you're 9 months before, the first renewal you're waived, and then you start clean at the next
so
cycle.
do we do that as a board? Because I think that's what we should be doing. I know other states are doing it that way, because I ran into that a couple times.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, to the board, we've I've, in the few cases that have come up, that's kind of what I've done based upon, but so I didn't want to hold the board up, but I mean, we really, the board should agree, you know, that's the policy. I mean, that seems to work out for all the other, you know.
I know we're running short on Ann's time.
Okay.
But yeah, I myself support that, because I ran into it. It doesn't make sense if you get your license and then we should give that leeway of that first year.
We do.
And getting into prorating continuing education is really, it's a mathematical
Nightmare.
nightmare.
Yeah.
Prorating. So other professions, other commissions, they've waived, you know, you're exempt for the first renewal.
Well, I would recommend that. Do we vote for that, or do we
Well,
just?
I could put it into the minutes if the board agrees, you know, it's.
And I know you're short on time. I don't know if you've been listening to that conversation, but
Yeah.
I would wholeheartedly like to get that in the
I agree.
minutes. That we
I
should do
agree.
that, waive that
I think
first
that's
year.
very fair.
Yep.
Tom, you're
Okay.
on board too?
Yes, I
Yeah.
am.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna
Okay.
cut out.
All right.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you,
Well,
Ann.
will this
Thanks, ma'am.
mess up the meeting if I leave now?
No, I
No,
think
we're
if
not-
we're
we're
all,
not
I think
doing
I
that.
can close, we can close the
Okay.
meeting right now.
Yep.
At
Sorry.
10:21.
Okay, terrific. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. Take care. Bye.
All right, so meeting is closed. You can stop recording.
Okay.
Just as an aside, Derek Saban has not had a license since 2015. So there's a problem with the CLARB record too.